Hi, this is another in our series of oral history projects for the Archives of Iowa Broadcasting. I'm Cliff Brockman. Our producer today is Paul Yeager, and our guest today is Mollie Cooney, who is a retired anchor and reporter from KCCI TV in Des Moines. Thanks for being with us today, Mollie.
Oh, Cliff, thank you so much. I'm honored to be included in this, and I admire you for what you are doing to help preserve the history of our wonderful profession in Iowa. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, Mollie, you're a native of Des Moines, and
Well, sort of. Native of Clarinda.
Oh,
Clarinda, yep, Clarinda, Iowa is my home.
my
I was there
mistake.
for 10 years, yep. And then I moved here, and I went to Mount Pleasant, then I moved here in middle school. So I considered Des Moines pretty much my home after that. So
Very good. And then you went to Iowa State University, and we just discovered that we were graduated the same year from there, but we didn't know each other at that time.
I know. We should, and that's of course before cell phones, so I don't have any pictures of classes, but we've obviously had the same professors and wonderful memories of that. So.
Yeah. What made you decide that you wanted to get into broadcast journalism?
I went to Iowa State in magazine journalism. I'd always loved reading, writing, English, everything. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, but I loved the written word. And so I started in magazine journalism. And I also worked at the Daily. I was a copy editor. And after a year or two working at the Daily, we would get calls from people saying, oh, you misquoted me on this reporter misquoted me on that. And at that time, of course, WI was owned by Iowa State University. I started taking some TCA courses, radio, broadcast news courses, started working at WI my junior year doing the noon news on Saturdays. And I loved the combination of visually showing you what we were talking about. And then the easy way out, we could interview somebody. So we couldn't misquote them because we put a microphone up and let them say in their own words. And I never looked back. I love broadcast journalism. WI was a wonderful training ground and just hit the ground running right after I graduated.
Very good. Well, you went to KCCI after graduation.
I had a year before that. For the first year after I graduated, I worked at a TV station in Sioux City for a little bit and then a radio station in Des Moines. So in 1976, I got hired by KCCI.
Okay. By the way, what station did you work at in Sioux City?
KMEG.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
I worked at KCAU.
You're kidding. Oh
No.
my God. This is so weird. And now, a few years later, we reconnect. But yeah, I worked with Phil Witt up in KMEG, and then he went to Kansas City and became a longtime anchor down there. So yeah, good people come out of all this traveling around.
There we go. Well, at that time, there weren't a lot of women in TV news. So how did, talk to us about that.
No, there weren't. I didn't mean to make a statement, but I remember my early years when I was little watching Nancy Dickerson doing the news on NBC. And I had a chance a few years ago to talk to John Dickerson and told him what that meant. I mean, it just planted a seed in my mind, and we were there at Iowa State during all the just blossoming of all the news and women's movements and rights, and it just flowed. Yes, I was one of the first female reporters. I don't know as far as WI if they'd had any other female anchors before that on air. I didn't really notice, didn't think about it. I just did it. And same thing with Channel 8. They'd had Mary Brubaker doing more community types of programming, Connie McBurney on the weather. We had some, I don't know if we had any other reporters. Like I said, I just didn't think about it, but I guess I was the first female anchor for KCCI. And there were a few times when Russ Van Dyke, I would anchor with him. I must have looked like his grandchild, you know. But he was so gracious and he was wonderful. And I learned from the best. And I never felt that I had to do women's stories, you know. And in fact, my third child, I did the noon news and delivered her an hour later.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not the brightest thing, but I still had my makeup on, and the hospital was right across the street. So try that, Cliff Brockman.
Good story. It's a good story. So in the newsroom, you were accepted with no problem, but did you have any difficulties when you went out reporting? People take you seriously?
People would offer to carry the tripod for me, you know, oh, here, let me get this for you. And I'm like, nope, I'm balanced. That's fine. I've got, you know, equipment on both sides. Because back then we had to do everything. We had to do, back then when I started, we had film. And we would go out teams of two, and we'd be a reporter and be a photographer for the other reporter, then vice versa. We'd come back, wait for the film to be processed, and then do our own editing. So I carried everything, I did everything, edited film, edited videotape, and all of that. So I don't feel, Des Moines was a very accepting community, and I never really felt like I was looked down upon. The only thing was, again, like, you know, handling the equipment and that type of thing. So, but then we got female photographers, and that ended quickly too.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, then you went out to California for a while. What prompted that?
I was anchoring in Des Moines, and I got this call from KNTV in San Jose, California. They were looking for a female anchor, and I didn't even know where San Jose was. But they said they got my name through the grapevine, and I went out there in March of '79. We'd had the worst winter here. I landed there for the interview. It was green. There were oranges on the trees. I'm like, I don't care. I'm coming. And so I moved out, became the weekend anchor out there, ABC affiliate in the San Francisco Bay Area. And a year later, I was dating Kevin Cooney, and a year later he came out, was my co-anchor. We were there 2 or 3 more years, and then they hired us both back at Channel 8. They hired Kevin as 6 and 10 o'clock anchor, and I was the 10 o'clock live reporter. And so loved my time out there. We still have absolutely wonderful friends, but sometimes, you know, sometimes you have to move away to appreciate what you had at home. And never look back on that either.
Since you mentioned Kevin, how did you two meet?
We met at Iowa State, and I remember him because he was a year ahead of me, but we were in the same Jack Shelley class. And this was like the early 70s, 72, 73. And guys were growing their hair out long. I don't know about you, Cliff, but Kevin had really curly hair, and he tried to grow it long. Well, it went out. And I had to sit behind this huge curly head of hair. So I couldn't see around him. And then he had like round glasses and saddle shoes. I'm like, this preppy hippie, who are you? But he had already been working at Channel 8 since he was 16, doing everything behind the scenes and working sports with Pete Taylor. And Jack Shelley would always say, well, Kevin, what do they do down at Channel 8? And the rest of us were like, la-di-da. We were just trying to figure out, you know, did we want to do print? Did we want to do radio, you know, and all this? And so anyway, that was my first introduction. I thought he was a big shot. And it was not until I got hired at Channel 8, and I hadn't even started yet, but we were at a mutual press conference together, and he came up and he shook my hand and he said, I hear you're going to be joining us. I think that's just great. Welcome. And I was like, oh, I guess he's not such a jerk after all. The rest is history. We started dating, and we anchored together. And yeah, we've been married since 1980.
Well, congratulations.
So, thank you.
I might just mention that he is standing off camera there, I think.
I got to be nice, don't I? I have to, yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
And there is an interview in the archives already that I think Jeff Stein did with Kevin a few years ago. So
I think so, yes. Yeah.
And one other thing I forgot to mention, your son is behind the camera here today. So he's made quite a career himself.
He has. Alex does a fabulous job. He went to Mizzou and studied photojournalism, interned at the White House, and he is a wonderful photographer, videographer, audio, freelance. He can do everything. He can work 11 microphones. He does everything from one day he's down with the Kansas City Chiefs, the next day he's up with a Pioneer hybrid, miking up Brock Purdy. Then he's in Iowa City with NBC doing Caitlin, everything. And now he's doing his mother. But I told all of our kids, I said, when they were young, I said, go into medicine because all us baby boomers are going to need physical therapy, occupational therapy, and all this stuff when we get older. And nobody listened.
That was a good suggestion, yeah.
I know. But anyway, he's made a wonderful career out of it. And we have 2 daughters. One's an attorney here in town, and the other one is in human resources for an insurance company. So,
wow, so they've done very well.
So they've
good for
done
them.
good. Mm-hmm. We're very proud of all of them.
Let's get back to you. You came back then to KCCI. Why did you come back?
It was kind of a combination of everything. They offered Kevin the 6 and 10 o'clock job at Channel 8, and we liked our time in San Jose. In fact, our news director out there went on to work at ESPN, Al Jaffe, who became, I think he hired and fired everybody at ESPN forever, and he's still a dear, dear friend of ours. But the lure of coming back home, settling right back into Channel 8, it fit. San Jose was going through, I'd covered school desegregation out there, teachers went on strike. The cost of living was incredible. That was just beginning the boom of Silicon Valley in the early 80s. Traffic, I can't even stand driving to Waukee now. It's like too much traffic. Just a combination of everything. And it was nice to be that they would hire both of us back. And we thought, we wanted to start a family. And what better place than Iowa?
Well, I'll agree with that. Let's turn to some of the stories that you've covered, some of the big stories here in Des Moines or the Des Moines area. One of them I know was the Septuplets. Got worldwide attention, and you did a lot of coverage with them throughout the years, I think, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It was just one of those stories. I have covered everything. I've anchored every newscast. I've covered courts, school board, politicians, caucuses. This story landed in my lap. I got a tip that there was a woman in Carlisle, Iowa, who was expecting 7 babies, and I got contact information. It was their minister who I contacted. And at that time, the McCaughys were still living in a little tiny house, and she was in the midst of her pregnancy. So I talked to the minister, and we just thought, there's no way that this is going to go full term. So I said, I'm not going to do anything right now. One, I don't want to be responsible having 25 satellite trucks in their front yard. And it was just like, let's just, let me know if anybody else gets a hold of it, and then we'll do the story. But let's just kind of wait and see what happens. And because of that, and McCaughey said they never asked for it to be secret, and I think the whole town of Carlisle probably knew. Couldn't do it now with social media. That would not work. But because I waited, they granted me the first exclusive interview. And after the babies were born, and Ann Curry had been wooing them with gift baskets and all this and all of a sudden I'm ushered through the tunnels of Methodist Hospital that I didn't even know existed underground. got the first exclusive interview in their hospital room. Didn't see the babies yet, but Dan Rather broke in with my interview, and it just went crazy. Then every year, I would go down once a year and do a follow-up on how they're doing. I even took one of my daughters once to help corral the kids, but Bobby had them all lined up, and I mean, it was just wonderful. And I did it until they were 10 years old. Then I did it when they turned teenagers. Then we touched base again when they turned 16 and driving. We actually got in the car as they were driving. And then when they graduated from high school. And then we were like, okay. I said, I always felt like the weird great aunt that showed up once a year and said, I'm back, remember me? And would interview all the kids. And we had wonderful video of them when they were little, jumping on the couches. And I think Bobby and Kenny were mortified, but it was adorable. And of course, there was controversy too in this, and that, how did this happen? But they were gracious. And I think they're 29 years old now. And they have an older sister, Michaela. They made it on, it was the first year birthday, they were on Oprah with 7 high chairs. And so I got to go cover that with a team from Channel 8. So that was fun too. But it's just been, one of those stories that it was a happy ending. Yes, it was controversial, but like Bobby said, I mean, how else, what can you do? You can't choose. This just worked. And it's been, I haven't seen them in a long time, but it'd be fun to see them maybe when they turn 30. I wonder if I could come back and do a follow-up. I don't know. I know somebody I can call.
Well, I was just wondering if you had stayed in touch with them, but apparently not.
No. And I haven't really even seen them. We've run into them a couple times and just kind of chat, but yeah.
Well, another big story that you must have covered was in 93, I'm guessing, when all the flooding occurred. It was all across Iowa. I was in the Quad Cities, and there was horrible floods there.
Yeah.
Of course, in Des Moines, the water plant flooded, and that caused a lot of problems. Tell us about your reporting on that.
That, again, was just one of those once-in-a-lifetime occurrences. In fact, we had been the night before, we were at a dinner. They were going to have a Grand Prix going through the streets of Des Moines. So we were at a dinner downtown, and the governor was there and all these other city officials to, kick off this race. And we got word that something had happened at the water plant. So long story short, Kevin ended up working overnight, going down to the water treatment plant and interviewing L.D. McMullen and all that overnight. At 7 the next morning, I think probably my parents came over to babysit. I went down. Kevin was on the air. I went down, kicked him off the air. I said, you smell, you look like you've been up all night in the rain, which he had been. And so he did the first coverage, the breaking news of what was happening. And then at 7 o'clock or so in the morning, I sat down at the anchor desk. We had no water. I mean, it affected everybody in Des Moines. It was just unbelievable. You couldn't even get your mind around it. I sat down at the anchor desk at 7 in the morning, and I did not even stand up until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We just went live, unscripted. It was like a symphony just unfolding. In my ear, they were saying, throw it to Michelle Parker. She's down at the Raccoon River. Throw it to Todd Magel. He's out in Valley Junction. They're doing sandbagging. Throw it to so-and-so. They're here, there. We even did live shots in the KCCI men's and women's room on how to flush a toilet. Yeah, think of that introduction. It was like, I did not go to journalism school for this, but it all came together. And L.D. McMullen, they had press conferences. They kept us up. National media came in. I remember Scott Pelley set up next to my desk, and looting, everything, crime stopped. And Scott Pelley said, this would never happen in a major city. This would never, there's no crime, no nothing. And people became kind to each other. You'd meet your neighbors up at the bladder where you'd get water up the street, or at a parking lot. We had our chief engineer brought in a huge big water bladder so we could either, kind of freshen up. People were kind to each other because we were all in this together. And as a journalist, a lot of times you cover something and you go home and things are fine. No, we had a bathtub full of water upstairs and 3 kids trying to, thank heavens for my parents, they were in town. So we had Huey helicopters out and dropping sandbags. President Clinton came. It was, again, the best of times and the worst of times, but once in a lifetime. Hope it never, ever happens again, but we all made it through.
Yeah, great. Any other memorable stories that you have?
Oh, it's so hard over the years, 45 years or so. I anchored the noon news for a long, long time, and that was fun because we had a community segment, 5-minute kind of a community guest segment, and that was fun because I'd bring in the maestro from the Des Moines Symphony or Jeff Chelsvig from the Civic Center. They would bring in actors, and so we got to tell the community what was going on. I was a health reporter for a long time, and one of the nicest things, I did a story early on about prostate cancer, and I'll never forget, a woman called from Indianola and she said, "I saw your story." And I had my husband go check, and he had prostate cancer. I did another story, and I got a call from the Vermeers in Pella, and out of my story, and I can't remember what the story was now, they flew a plane full of kids who'd never been on a plane, never been out of the state, and they invited me to go. We went to Disney World. And so I got to cover that and do live shots down there and things like that just, popped up. I cannot think of another profession. It's different every day. You never know what you're going to do after the story meeting in the morning where everybody gives ideas. You meet the best of people, you meet the worst of people. And I miss it, but yet I'm glad to pass the baton on.
Let me ask you, do you have any, you've given us several anecdotes already, but are there any other humorous ones you might tell us about?
Well, my first big blooper was when I was anchoring WI, and I was 19, 20 years old from Iowa. And I was reading the noon news on Channel 5, ABC, and Syrian President Hafez Assad was in office. Okay, I'm from Iowa. I don't know. I read the script and I said, Syrian President Hafez Assad. I didn't know what I said. The camera crew, they were all on the floor. My parents were watching from Des Moines. My brother at that time worked at the State Department in DC. They called my brother and said, "You won't believe what your little sister just said." And my brother said, "She's not really wrong." So anyway, that's one of my bloopers. But yeah, we have a blooper tape that, yeah, wonderful. But no, that's probably, yeah, the anecdotes can go on and on. We would have puppies on from the Rescue League on the noon news, and one time they all disappeared during the commercial break. We had to round them all up before the lady from the ARL could sit down with us, and we could see curtains moving, so we knew where the puppies were. Yeah, just fun, some, things. Channel 8 is still a family. We just celebrated our 70th anniversary, and we had a big event, and I think we had over 300 people come back for it, and it was like a family reunion of everybody you really wanted to see. My past, my present, and my future, all in this wonderful big event room. And this is our family. We grew up together. We had kids together. We had marriages and divorces and romances in the newsroom. And it's just, I don't know that it can happen again. I'm sorry that, a lot of people move on and move to other stations to move up in the world, but it was just a magical time. And of course, 9/11, we won't even start in that, but that was another horrific time where it hit home, and stories out of that too. So a lot going on.
Yes, people seem to say at KCCI for a long time, kind of unusual for TV stations.
It is. And we weren't the only ones who came back. We had a friend that went to Texas and came back. I don't think it's that way quite as much anymore. And there are still some, and we'll see, there are still some, but it worked. And I don't know what the magic ingredient was, because we had our ups and downs, but I don't know that you'd ever find that. And again, like with our kids, I don't know that they're not going to be in either the same profession or the same place of work for 30, 40 years plus. And it doesn't happen much anymore.
Well, since we're speaking of family, I'm going to jump back for a minute. Kevin and you worked at the same station for a very long time at KCCI. How did that work out with, husband and wife working in the same newsroom for all those years?
It was great because we didn't work the same schedule. In 1984, our son was born, so I went kind of 2/3 time. I did, and then we had 2 daughters after that. I worked early mornings until mid-afternoon. We kind of passed in the driveway. Then Kevin would go in at about 1:30 or 2 and work till 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock. So total opposite schedules, total opposite crews. He'd mentioned somebody at work, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. So it worked. I did sometimes the early morning news, and then I always did the noon news. He did the 6 and 10 o'clock news. So we never needed daycare, but I don't know where all that money went. Oh yeah, 3 colleges. Yeah, that's it. But no, it worked. And we lived close enough to the station. Of course, in Des Moines, everything's 10 minutes away. He would be able to come home at night between like 7 and 8 o'clock when the kids were little for dinner, or at least to help me put one to bed, because then the other one would get up and then they'd all be out in the hallway. And then he would take care of them in the morning, getting them to school. And then I had the afternoon, lessons, music lessons and golf and all that kind of thing. It was harder on him, I think, because he missed a lot of working nights. He missed a lot of band concerts, or he'd be there for just a little bit and have to go back to work. And so we made it work. The one incident I remember, one of our daughters was over at a friend's house one night for dinner, and she said, it was so weird the dad was there at dinner time. And I'm like, oh, you're going to go on Oprah and tell us that, we ruined your childhood, but they seem to survive.
Very good. 45 years, you said, roughly, you were in the business. What kind of, let's start with technology. What kind of technology changes have you seen? You mentioned the film.
Well, yeah. I mean, I dug this out, film, 3/4 inch tape.
Sure.
All the way down to look where we are now. And phones and social media, AI, it's incredible. I think I got out just at the right time where I was like, okay, let the next generation take over and go from there. It's been incredible where I started really even with a Bell & Howell silent camera, I think at WI or at Iowa State, to we can go live anywhere, anytime. And again, social media, good and bad. Who do you believe? How do they teach journalism anymore, type of thing. Technology can be wonderful, and it can be its best enemy too. So I love the technology, and I'm glad I learned the ropes on the way up to appreciate where we are now. And it'll be fascinating to see where we go from here.
Any thoughts on where the profession might be going?
All I can say is we need journalism more than ever right now. We've taken punches forever. I mean, it's always shoot the messenger, and I mean, forever. Reporters, newspapers. I'm I'm sorry to see the demise of the newspapers, but yet they're reinventing, and we've got Capital Dispatch and we've got Substack, and it'll reinvent itself, and there's still quality journalists out there. I hate to think how many things are not being covered, whether it's local government, national, what people are getting away with that we haven't uncovered. But I think we need journalism and journalists now more than ever. Trusted journalists, and of course that has been eroded. I think the pendulum will swing back. It's not dead, and we've got wonderful people out there that are keeping it alive and trying to keep our heads above water. We'll always deliver the news. How we get it to the audience, I don't know. That's for the next generations to worry about and to get to. But there's always going to be a need to cover the facts, get the information to the audience, make people educated and aware, because these younger generations, with COVID and they're on their iPads. A lot of times our kids didn't even watch the news until you become a homeowner. And then you're like, oh, what's all this with city council and school boards and medical? That makes a difference. So I wish them well. I'll just sit back with my popcorn and watch them do the news, and hopefully people will learn that we can be trusted. We do have a purpose, and it is to inform and educate people. People hear what they want to hear. Can't fight that. Never will be able to fight that, but we can do our best.
Yeah, the TV newscast used to be appointment viewing when I was...
Absolutely.
Yeah, it isn't anymore with 24 hours on the internet and the web.
And instant and not even not even qualified journalists, no training, and people are believing obviously what they're seeing. We're trying to educate our grandkids that don't believe what you're reading on social and TikTok and all that. I would not want to be a parent these days. There's a lot more. We thought we had it rough. No. This is nothing compared to what they're facing now. So teachers and journalists, we're in it together, and hopefully we can raise good, educated young people to be aware and not really, not be cynical, but skeptical of what they read and what they hear and what they learn.
Well, let me give you one final question here, Mollie. What will the first line of your biography be? What will your legacy be, do you hope?
Oh, boy, I haven't ever thought about that. I would like it to be, she was fair and balanced and had a good sense of humor and a great recipe for beef stroganoff.
Okay, sounds good.
I want to, cook for the grandkids. That's what's fun.
Well, Mollie, thank you so much for spending some time with us here today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Cliff, and I want to interview you on your career and all that. And one of my other proud moments was I started a program called In the Artist Studio, just on my own, because during the recession in 2008, people lost their jobs and just recreated themselves and interviewed over 200 artists over the years. Then it got expensive because I kept buying their artwork. But I never quit wanting to ask people what they do and how they do it. So someday I'll get a hold of you and we'll reverse the roles.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for including me. I'm very honored, very happy to be part of this.
Thank you, Mollie. Our interview today with Mollie Cooney, who is retired KCCI anchor and reporter. I'm Cliff Brockman. Our producer today was Paul Yeager. And this has been another in the series of oral history projects for the Archives of Iowa Broadcasting.